All right, so I'm going to get started. I'm playing with a new setup for this live. I'm actually doing it from a computer instead of on a phone. I probably should have did it on a tablet because there's a huge delay, so I'll just disregard my Instagram and try to, if people chime in with comments or whatever, I'll try to answer them. So bear with me. Hey, so what I wanted to do was, today's the anniversary of a good buddy of mine, Aaron Greider. He was killed 15 years ago today on the way to a follow-up target. And I just wanted to do a toast for a couple reasons. One, to kind of share his story, and two, it's kind of helps me, it's like a healing, I guess, or contributes to healing. You know, talking about it, because you know, I don't talk about this kind of stuff much. You know, I do a little shout out every anniversary to my buddies that were killed, and I kind of leave it at that. I don't really talk about it with anybody, so this this kind of helps me kind of deal with the grief. You know, it still hurts, man, because you know, I was with him on that night, and it was a kind of a rough night, and I'll talk about it, but. Welcome to everybody that joined. Give me a thumbs up if the sound is good, because I'm testing a new lapel mic, a wireless mic, and I think when I listen to it, it's picking up my ceiling fan, the humming. So if it's not good enough, if it's distracting, I'll switch to my iPad, but it'll take me a couple minutes to do that. Somebody give me a thumbs up, please, and I will continue. I just want to make sure you're able to hear, because I'm going to actually post this video when it's done, after it's live. All right, thanks, Sapper Woody. So, I don't think I can share on this screen. I should have used a different program so I could share the screen with some photos of Aaron and kind of his background, but basically Aaron was he was a Ranger. He was in 175 BCO, if I remember right, and even before that he was in the 82nd Airborne. And when he went to the Ranger Regiment, he went as an NCO. I think he was already an E5 and he was a really great dude, very religious, very strong faith, very strong Christian. He even had, him and his wife at the time had a youth ministry that they were kind of doing together, and it was very cool. But Aaron was a hard charger. He was, I believe, the youngest guy in our OTC class. Aaron and I went to OTC together, and he was such a hard charger, so energetic, so full of life, and he was so super motivated. Like he got that nickname Rabbit because he was like the Energizer Bunny. He was always moving and going and shuffling and moving and shaking and just all over the place. And what's up, Louie? Another buddy of ours, a mutual friend, popped on here. So hopefully I do this right, man. But Aaron was a great motherfucker, excuse my French. He was a devoted father, devoted husband, devoted Christian, son, brother. I know his sister. He was just an all-around great dude. Had a big heart, a heart of gold, and he was the guy that would no shit give you the shirt off his back if you needed it. People say that about their friends and so forth, but this guy would really do it. Like Aaron was, I can't even like justify how great of a man this guy was through my words. He was one of those guys, and he was quite a bit younger than I, but like some of his older guys looked up to him just because his drive and his motivation, and just how outgoing and happy he always was all the time. And it motivated us, and it kind of, even when you were feeling kind of cruddy and down in the dumps, man, just listening to Aaron talk and chatting with him would get you in a good mood. not only was he a great friend and a soldier, a warrior, he was a superb mentor. Like, this guy would go to the gym, and we were co-located with, with some other units, like some Rangers. So Rangers would share the gym that we're at on the FOB we're at. And he would be in there on, I think it was, I don't remember if it was Wednesdays. I don't remember what day he did, but he would give classes to the young Rangers on Olympic lifts. And he would do, like, one day he would do the snatch, another day he would do the clean and jerk. And he would, like, mentor these young Rangers and other soldiers so that they wouldn't get hurt. They wouldn't hurt themselves. And, that's very easy to do at some of those lifts. They're very dynamic. And if you're doing them right, they require a lot of technique, especially if you're using challenging weights. But anyways, Aaron was a hell of a guy, and we can't let guys like that memory fade. And every year I try to do something for him and mention him and share a couple pictures. But this year, and we've done toasts, I think, in the past with a couple of friends of mine. I think we did a toast at War Dog Surplus once with Pistol Pete. And I don't remember if it was Aaron or if it was who it was. It might have been Jared. I don't remember. But I remember doing some toasts with other guys here on social media. But if you Google Aaron Greider, or his actual first name was Ronald Aaron Greider, and you can see some information about him, where he came from and what he did. And I was going to share this article, but I can't do it with this Instagram live. You can't share a screen, at least not in this configuration that I'm using today. And I should have did this on my iPad or my iPhone. Anyways, you can Google it and you can find out about him. And he was, like I said, I can't say enough kind words about Aaron. A true hero, like in the truest sense of that word. Not just because of his actions that night, but his actions throughout life. Like, he was just that kind of guy. I can't say enough about him. So, little side story, I mentioned Aaron did not, his first name was Ronald, and in OTC, some of us would mess with him a little bit. I know I did, and I kind of felt bad about it after, but he despised his first name. He did not like to be called Ronald. He liked to be called Aaron, which was his middle name. And, like, if you called him Ron or Ronnie, like, he didn't get mad much, but if you did that, that was a good way to see him mad, because I did it once, and I never did it again after that. Not because he threatened me or physically harmed me or anything like that. You could just tell how mad he got and how serious he took that. But anyways, he got a couple of nicknames which stuck with him. One of them stuck with him a long time, Rabbit. And I think I already kind of talked about that, the Energizer Bunny story. But his actual first nickname before that in OTC was GWAT. And man, I wish I had this full story. I have to ask another buddy, because another buddy of ours, a mutual friend, gave him that nickname. And the acronym stood for something, and it wasn't the Global War on Terrorism. I can't remember what it was. But once we went to the squadron, guys started calling him Rabbit because of his energy, and that name just stuck. And that's how everybody, even on the internet, like social media, you'll see posts about him from random strangers or people that read about him, and they'll put Aaron Rabbit Greider on there. I'm like, how about that, man? Like, even, like, that's his legacy, I guess. But I can't say enough good things about him. Let me tell you a little bit about the night he was killed. I think that'll be helpful for me, I think. I'm not a war story guy. Most of you know, if you follow me, that I don't like telling war stories or talking about that stuff. But here's kind of the cliff notes of what happened. We were going after this. We're prosecuting this target in northeast of Kunduz, Afghanistan. We were based out of Kunduz. So we went to this target, and it was in this really walled-in small village, very high walls. If any of you ever been to Afghanistan, you know some of those villages have those stone walls, not stone, but that like shitcrete, I call it, the garbage concrete that they make. Very high, like 15-foot high walls. And the roads that intersected throughout this village were like bordered by these very tall walls. So you're very channelized in your movement when going to the buildings in the village. So it was already kind of a shady movement just because of that terrain that we're in. Kind of dangerous, right? And yeah, there's ISR and stuff like that, but those cameras in the sky, man, they don't see everything. And guys, bad guys used to, at least they did then, they used to hide. They used to get under blankets and hide their thermal signature with like wet, damp blankets, and they used to do other shit too. But anyways, we went and we hit this target, and it was if I remember right, it was a pretty quiet target. In fact, I think it was the person we were looking for was not on that target, but there were some people on that target that were able to give us some information when we questioned them. And we were told that he was at I don't remember if it was a relative or a friend, another location within that village, just literally a few blocks away. I don't remember what direction. And we had made a lot of noise, right? We flew there with helos, so you can hear those out in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night. They're pretty distinctive. And then noises we made during our assault on this original target, which was a dry hole, right? The person we were looking for was not there. We got some information to drive us to a follow-on target, which was not that far away. It was literally, I think, like a few blocks away. And so the commander made the decision to move to this next target. Now, the route we took was through this very channelized, these roads with these high walls, and all you had was, it was like a maze. All you had was like the side streets coming off. There was openings there, and then the houses, where the houses had their little courtyards and stuff. There was openings, you know, they usually had gates on the wall to the houses. So instead of taking a different route, which is probably what we should have done, and I don't really remember a lot of the details of why we took the route we took. Nonetheless, we did, and like I said, we made a lot of noise on that first target. There was explosions, there was probably flashbangs, there was, I don't think there was any gunfire. I don't remember there being any gunfights on that target. I think it was a pretty boring, dry target, but there was some noise, right? So we proceeded to move a couple blocks to the next follow-on, and we were kind of traveling down this road, and there was walls on both sides of the on the road, and the lead element, I was way in the back. I was kind of babysitting some of our partner force, some of our local partner force, and you could hear on the movement. We went about a block or maybe 2 blocks, I don't remember, but you could hear machine gun fire, and it sounded like, I don't remember if it was like PKM, but it was a pretty loud machine gun, and there was a couple of bursts, and you heard more gunfire, which was our guys up front who were in contact, returning fire, trying to put some fire on where the machine gun fire was coming from, and you heard a pretty significant gunfight. It wasn't like a 30-minute gunfight, but it was probably, you know how everything slows down, right, when that kind of stuff's going on. It was probably a couple minutes. Let's say it was a couple minutes. And all of a sudden, radio calls started coming over across the net about random information on what was happening. Apparently, the lead team took some casualties. Aaron was up front with the lead team, with his dog Bodie, which was normal procedure, protocol, was leading the element with the canine and his handler to kind of search for threats, right? Search for bombs, search for ambushes, that kind of thing. And radio calls were made that there was a tick, there was troops in contact, but then we had some Eagles go down. Some guys were taken, some guys became casualties, and they used call signs, so I knew who a couple of them were. And this turned out to be a mass cal event. So if you don't know what mass cal is, mass casualties, which means you usually take several casualties. So I think we took 3 or 4, one being the canine, Bodie. One was Bodie, one was Aaron, one was another buddy of ours, Chad, who was another OTC mate of ours, me and Aaron's. And I think there was one other guy that took some strafe or some ricochets off the ground or something. He didn't get wounded too bad, but he did take some gunfire. Aaron was pretty bad. We didn't get all the details right away, but after the situation developed, we found out a little later he had some pretty extensive arterial bleeding injuries, several. Chad was pretty jacked up. And then the other guy, I think he just had like a grazing wound on his arm or something. I don't remember exactly. And Bodie did take some of the ricochets off the ground. I don't know if the guy kind of sprayed at the ground and they bounced off the ground because he saw the dog. I don't know what happened because I wasn't up front, but Bodie did take one and it kind of filleted his skin open along his side, and that was it. But anyways, we're in contact, so we return fire. We break in contact, which breaking contact in that channelized terrain, you have no option but to go in reverse, right? And that's kind of what we did. They grabbed the casualties, brung them back, and we broke contact. We went to an area kind of in like a pseudo tree line, wood line, outside of the village, the outskirts of the town, and we started calling for like medevac and CAS and that kind of stuff, close air support. So we got AC-130 on scene. AC-130 leveled that block, leveled that alley, I should say, and there was no more. They were taking no more gunfire from that alley. Since it was a mass cal and I was an 18 Delta, I was a Special Forces medic. That wasn't my primary role, but because it was mass cal, our troop medic was kind of busy because he had a couple of casualties he was dealing with. So I got a call. We all got a call. Hey, any medics that are on this target, need you to come towards the front and help out with the casualties. So I kind of bumped up there and went, and I had Chad. Chad was with me, and Chad was alert and oriented. He was conscious. He was talking. He was not able to walk because I asked him, because he's kind of a big dude. I said, Chad, can you walk? He said, no, I don't think so, man. So he might have been a little shocky. He did lose a little blood. He got shot through the arm. I think it nicked an artery. I put a pressure dressing. I think somebody already had thrown a tourniquet on him. By the time I got to him, I threw a pressure dressing. I converted it to a pressure dressing. He was still conscious. All the hemorrhage was controlled. I checked him for other wounds, other injuries. He was clean. He was talking to me. And then because I had already started doing some canine training on that trip, I was not yet a handler, but I started working with the dog team. They brought Bodie to me because I was the only one that knew his commands. And Bodie was actually, for a dog that was wounded, like I said, his skin on his side gets splayed open. He was alert, oriented, and he was actually like, he wasn't being an asshole, which you would think a trained bite dog like that would be an asshole when they're wounded. He was kind of obedient. He was listening to commands. He listened to me. I took out a little leash. I hooked him up to me while I was kind of tending to Chad, and then I had to tend to Bodie. So I actually worked on 2 patients, one human, one canine, which was interesting because I don't think up until that point I ever worked on a dog, because dogs are still relatively new, at least from my perspective. So I kind of bandaged Bodie up. I had to muzzle him first because I didn't want to take any chances because he was a badass. He had a lot of real world bites. So I muzzled him first. I bandaged up his flank with some Ace Wrap and Curl-X, and then I just hooked him up. He was, like I said, he was moving around. He was fine. He had no signs of distress or injury. So then we kind of, the Casevac, at that point in time, the Casevac or the medevac was already en route. They touched down. They scooped up Aaron, the other guy, Mark. I think Bodie flew out with me. So they took those two. They took Aaron back because he was urgent. He was urgent surgical. He had to go. So they took him back while we waited for our exfil. 30 minutes later, maybe, I think our exfil came and we exfilled out of there. I had Bodie. I stayed with Bodie and I escorted him to the little trauma center that we had on our fob. We got back and our troop sergeant told us that Aaron had passed. Aaron was gone. And I'll never forget that moment in time. And then we kind of went, they all kind of went back to kind of do a little debrief. I stayed with Bodie. We went immediately to the surgeons, and what was really cool was our surgeons were going to work on him and kind of sew him up so he could kind of get on the next thing, smoking back home, and start doing his rehab. So we put him under. I kind of assisted the surgeon and the nurses. I was just there for moral support, really. I didn't do any procedural stuff. And they put Bodie under. They anesthetized him. They sewed him up. He had big old Franken stitches down the side of him. And then eventually he revived, and he was kind of on medical hold, right, until I think the next day. They flew him and Aaron out of there, and Aaron was deceased. He passed, right? So there was that had to happen. All the stuff that goes along with the casualty assistance and all that. I didn't go anywhere. I stayed in country and continued to work, right? We had other missions to do, but Bodie actually flew back to the unit, and the vet there started doing rehab and did any other like post-secondary or post-surgical stuff that he might have needed, any kind of definitive care. And Bodie actually rehabbed, and guess who he rehabbed with? He couldn't stay in the kennels at work. He had to stay with somebody who was kind of a handler trained guy. Bodie came home with me while he was rehabbing, so I kept Bodie for a while, and it was my absolute honor and privilege to take care of Aaron's dog. But Bodie stayed with me, and he got right back into it. About a year later, he deployed again after he rehabbed and rehabilitated. And unfortunately, he was what we call a float dog. He was like a backup. So all of us had primary dogs, and then we had one or two backups just in case we lost a dog or a dog got hurt. And my buddy Scotty, he lost his first dog, Canine Boy, on a target, saved a whole bunch of guys, sacrificed himself, saved a whole bunch of guys in my troop. Unfortunately, he was killed that night. So Scotty had to get a replacement to continue to be able to do his job with the guys he was helping out. And Bodie was a stand-in, and Bodie ended up getting killed on that trip, unfortunately. He went in a small building. So it was K9 versus bad guy with AK-47, and AK-47 got the better of Bodie, and he was killed that night. That was a year later. So I would like to think that Bodie and Aaron are together, right? Together in heaven. And that's kind of how that all went down. So I'd tell you more about it, about Aaron and that night and some of the stuff he said, but it's a little too much. So that's the story of Aaron Rabbit Grider. And at this time, I kind of want to do a toast. So if you have a glass, Charger glass. Tonight I'm using some Angel's Envy rye. This is some good stuff. Aaron and I used to smoke cigars. There's a few other guys. We used to smoke cigars on deployments. We'd get around the fire pit and smoke cigars and drink some bourbon and kind of, you know, do what guys do. But so Charger glass, and we're going to do a toast. We're going to toast Rabbit, Aaron Greider. The night Aaron was killed, September 18th, 2010, was actually his 30th birthday. So he was killed on his birthday, which was 15 years ago today. He left behind a wife and a beautiful little girl and a great family. And I still keep in touch with some of his family. But Aaron was a devoted father, son, brother, all of that, and a true warrior and hero. So, to Rabbit, to Aaron Greider, may he be running in the fields of heaven with him and Bodhi, and may they be eternally happy and at peace. We love you. We miss you, Aaron. God bless you guys. Salute. So that's Aaron's story, kind of the cliff notes, without getting too emotional. Hopefully you got something out of that. I know I did. And I'll stay on here for a couple more minutes if you guys have any questions or anything like that. So I'm just looking at who was on here. I'm not sure if anybody's still on here or not. Sorry guys, I got a little choked up. I apologize. Oh, here it is. Let's see. Does it say who's on here? See, when I do it from my iPad, I can see who's actually on here. All right, so if you got any comments or questions, go ahead and send them, guys. I'm going to finish this little bit of whiskey here, and then I'm going to call it. This new system I'm playing with on the technical side of things. I'm trying to up my video game, my creator game. So like the YouTube, the Patreon, the Instagram, the Facebook, all that stuff. So I'm learning these new programs like OBS and StreamYard. And StreamYard is the one that Mike and I use for Silencio Coffee Talk. But yeah, man, stay safe. Salute, Sierra. Sheriff G, thank you. Appreciate it. If you guys are still on here. But I get these wireless mics so I could do some range stuff and not have to worry about having like a microphone and all that stuff. And I got a nice Sony digital camera that I've been using for my live streams and my podcast stuff that Mike and I do. And now Instagram changed some of their setup to where you weren't able to get on a computer and post on Instagram like videos and stuff. But now you can, and you can live stream, which I was like, oh cool, I'm going to do a live stream on the computer because I got a bigger screen and it's easier to see, and there's more options. However, it's not really much better because you have to use a streaming program, which I use OBS for that, and there's this huge delay. So if I watch my Instagram scene, it's like 5 seconds behind. So I have to watch the OBS if I want to see my lips moving with the current sound the way I'm talking, but it's kind of weird, man. I'm learning this stuff as I go. But anybody have anything? Any comments? Any questions? Anybody else having some whiskey tonight? And I'm sure the comments there'll be a delay if anybody makes a comment. If I ask a question, it'll be like 12 seconds later, so I'll give it some time. What else is going on? Have you guys been following the podcast at all for Silencio? You guys liking that? Let me know. Thumbs up or down, or you liking the guests we're having on there, or is there some subject matter that you'd like to see that we haven't covered yet? Because we're trying to appease the masses, right? A lot of our stuff is catered to men. So I know there's some women followers out there that I'm not sure if they appreciate that or not, because I can't really talk about women's stuff. But I'm trying to make everybody happy here. I know that's impossible, but we're working on it. Anyways, all right, well, it doesn't look like anybody has anything. And how's this streaming platform? Because I'm I'm on Instagram, but it's through OBS, so it's going through a couple different things here. Oh, here's a comment. I didn't see some of these before. Thanks, Sapper. Appreciate it, buddy. Cheese and ham, very heartfelt. Thank you. I appreciate that. No problem. You couldn't toast. Thank you for your prayers. Prayers are greatly appreciated. Aaron he would love the prayers. He was very religious, very Christian, to the point where, like I said, he ran his own youth ministry. He's very devoted Christian. And I can't say enough good things about this guy. If you could have met him and known him, he was never, I shouldn't say he was never mad or frustrated, because I have seen him frustrated in OTC, and I'm going to let you in a little story, and I think I might have told this story on a podcast. But when we were in OTC during our shooting program, so he was a young Ranger, and I'm not saying all Rangers are, but a lot of Rangers don't get a lot of pistol work in, right? So they're not typically, especially young, like E5s, E6s, don't get a ton of pistol practice. So in our class, I'm just going to say it. I love Aaron, and I know he knows I don't mean any ill will, but he was a horrible pistol shot. Now, in OTC, he became a much better improved, a pretty awesome pistol shot. But in the grand scheme of things, it's kind of like, against the others in our class, against the rest of us, he wasn't a great pistol shot. And watching him sometimes get frustrated, that was the only time I ever seen him down, was when we were doing like shooting evals, and he'd like throw some shots on a pistol run, and it's like, come on, dude, like, you know, you got this, buddy. You just gotta relax, take some deep breaths, and get through it. And eventually he became much better, right? When you get to squadron, you shoot so much, man, like it's hard to be a shitty pistol shooter, because you do so much shooting. Like, the sheer odds of being a bad shooter are impossible. But starting out like an OTZ, Aaron was not the greatest pistol shot, and we ragged on him about it a little bit. Just, you know how the peers are, right? You got to give each other crap, and I kind of feel bad about it now, but like that was his weakness. If that guy had a weakness, that was Aaron's, right? Shooting a pistol, and not towards the end there. He was pretty good towards the end. There's you, Rabbit. But man, what a great dude! What a great family man. I hadn't seen his little girl. She was, I think, 4 then, so I haven't seen her in 15 years. So she's an adult now. Like, I can only imagine. Wow, just how time flies. And yeah, so that's the story of my friend Aaron Greider, aka Rabbit, aka G Watt, aka Ronnie. I love you, Aaron. I miss you, buddy. Think about him every day. And I know I got a lot of buddies that were on our Signal chat today talking about him and toasting him, and they did a toast at his the cemetery he's buried at in Colorado. A lot of his family and some of our mutual friends went out there, the ones that lived locally, and they went and did a toast for Aaron. And he's such a loved and appreciated guy, and he gave out love and respect and appreciation to everybody he knew. Anyways, I'm going to wrap it up, guys. Thank you. Appreciate you joining me if you joined me on this. And I'm going to post this, even though it's kind of sappy, but, you know, I got to do it because I owe it to my boy, Rabbit. You guys have a good night. Have a good one. God bless Rabbit. Love you, buddy. Thank you.